Welcome everybody to Wednesdays Live, and new year, new projects, new things to try. And yes, that is a black piece of paper. It's a piece of black Stonehenge aqua black watercolor paper, 140 pound. This is the subject that I had posted. Hi, Becky. I am going to do a different subject, and I'll tell you why. I'm really excited about this because when they first came out with this a couple of years ago, I was kind of reactionary. I thought, well, black watercolor paper, that's not going to work. And besides, who wants to make a painting that, looks like a black velvet painting or something? And I've since seen the work of David Becker, who works on black paper and does absolutely beautiful things. And I've been experimenting. Maybe I'm jumping in a little early with this to bring it to you, but I'm very excited about this. First of all, I think that those of you who find watercolor a bit daunting and prefer to work in a more opaque manner or want to be able to rework things, hello, Michael. I think you're going to find out this is probably going to suit you very well. For one thing, you would have to pick a subject like a nocturne, because what you're going to do is let the paper do the work of what would be the dark colors. And myself, my experience with doing nocturnes in watercolor, it's difficult because you have to get a lot of paint on there. And then sometimes the result isn't satisfying. Now, the other big advantage that I discovered was that using black paper, if you were to do an oil painting of this and do all these darks, you maybe have seen this if you tried it, or even in acrylics too. It gets kind of glary or glossy and dries to a different refraction, and something that should be jumping back in the picture, under a deep shadow, under something like that, kind of comes forward. This doesn't do that. The black paper sits right back there. So the reason I'm not going to do this subject is because I did sort of do it very quickly and literally spent less than 10 minutes, probably closer to 5 minutes, just getting it to this stage. So I thought I would do Notre Dame. It's a terrible photo. It was taken from television when they were inaugurating or reopening it. But I think it's very interesting for a night scene. So what do we got to do with this that would be... Well, okay, first let me say, I'm actually not... I do have some history of working on non-white papers. You can work on this Stonehenge printmaking paper, which is called Craft. It's about the color of a brown paper bag. And I've done that in sketchbooks. Here's a little view of the elevator in Burlington. And all I did to this was use my regular watercolors, and I just added a little bit of white gouache. They also, the same paper, it's a 90-pound paper because it's a printmaking paper, but it takes watercolor nicely. This is a sort of a buff color they have in a gray, and these are some, we used to go down to Hy-Vee on senior mornings and sketch the people who were sitting there. So I just would add a little bit of white to some of the colors to get the flesh tones. So, hi Diane. So there are also bona fide watercolor papers. This is Bockingford, which is a kind of a pale blue. They have a gray, and they also have a buff tan. And I've worked on those. So what does it look like? So what do we have to do different with this that we don't do with our regular watercolor paper? Well, for one, you're going to need denser pigments, ones that are, in other words, by dense, I mean they are a larger particle pigment, and or mix white with them, because the white, the titanium or the zinc, is a large particle pigment and is dense, and it gives the paint more body and you can move it around. You can still run a beaded wash, I found that out. But here's a color chart of regular watercolors on black paper. Now this is yellow ochre because it's a dense pigment, so you might use that. This is a runnier mix, this is a slow moving mix. You can see it's a little more opaque. This is cobalt teal. Runny mix, denser mix. This is one called nickel titanate yellow, or cad lemon would do the same thing. Again, runny and denser. Here's a cad red. You can see that, and here's a cad orange. Now, what you probably can't see here is right here is alizarin crimson. Hi, Dwight. And here is Prussian blue. They're dark. But they're small particles, so they don't show. And what you definitely can't see right here is transparent red iron oxide. So if you're using a brown, you might want to go to the real burnt sienna and not the red iron oxide. Hello, Don. So that's the idea. We're going to be putting the pigment on a little denser than we would normally do. The other thing is so I can see where the paper ends, so I don't overpaint. I can't use black tape. I have to use the regular masking tape. Hi, Jan. So use the denser pigments like yellow ochre, cad orange, cad yellow, cad red. You can use your alizarin, but you're going to have to put a little bit of white in it. Prussian blue will work, but you have to put white in it. Same thing with ultramarine. Cobalt and cerulean are bigger, and they're a little denser, so they will work nicely. Hello, Lori. Alternatively, you could use gouache or any of those colors which already have some white mixed into them, like Naples yellow. The Holbein has a range of ones like the Jaune Brilliant number 2 and the Jaune Brilliant number 1. I think I'm going to squeeze some of those out. David Becker uses a Holbein color called Gray of Gray, and I have something very similar. This is Rowney. It's called Cool Gray. I'm probably going to use that. And the Holbein Lavender has some white in it, and that's very, very useful. So that's already on the palette. Other than that, there's, there's a gouache color called Flesh Tint, which would kind of be what you would do if you mixed white with this or the burnt sienna. That could be useful. The other thing is you're going to have to use a slightly stiffer brush like your nylons. And, oh yeah, Jan, I will tell you, actually you have to order this thing from England. That's the only place you can get it, the palette. Message me and I'll send you a link to it. So nylon brushes, or maybe even like an oil painting, acrylic painting, nylon type brush. So another issue that's kind of funny, you're going to find out that if you try to draw on black paper with a pencil, you're not going to see it. So I'm going to put out some of that cool gray. I'm going to put out some Jaune Brilliant number 1, which is kind of a basically white and yellow ochre. If you don't need to buy this, you could just get some titanium white, which I have right here, and you could, Mary, hello, new friends. I already have the lavender here. You could, yellow ochre in that will give you this. Let's see, lavender. Let's put out some of that orange, the Jaune Brilliant number 2, which is a little bit more orangey. So, what I found is that in order to get my drawing done, I have to use either the lavender or the cool gray in a pale mix there to make a mark. So there's basically a diagonal. This is a square image. That's why I had to cut it down. Maybe like that. There's a Ile de Cite here. The 2 lovely towers. Spire. So you have to draw with white. I suppose you could also draw with a white pastel pencil or those charcoal pencils, but I really find those annoying because you sharpen them and then they break off and while you're sharpening them, and you buy a pencil that's like 8 inches long, and by the time you get done sharpening a point to it, it's 2.5 inches long or something. So you can paint over, unlike normally in watercolor. This is basically going to be more like oil painting or acrylic painting. So let's see. I'm going to get a bigger brush, and let's get the Oriental brush. It's sort of stiff. I'm just going to get some of that cool gray and a little bit of lavender. Now you can see these are slow-moving mixes. But for starters, I'm going to, kind of runny, and I'm going to use sort of paint backwards of what we normally do with our watercolor. I should have left the windows behind, the Gothic bell tower there. And where you need to go denser, let's put a little bit of lavender in that. So I'm just looking for these big shapes. And I can put darks over lights, and I can put lights over darks with this stuff. That is what's kind of exciting me about this, because one thing I'm really getting excited about. So I'm throwing in a little bit of the Cindy, hello. When we were in Venice, there were just a ton of drop-dead gorgeous views to see that I was looking at, and I was saying, well, man, these are just not watercolor subjects. I'm going to have to either do these in oil, but now I'm going to do them in this, on black paper. Let's look at some of the things we could do. There's another view. I kind of like this with the diagonal. You don't have to do Notre Dame. You could do the church in Keosauqua. You could do the Ponte Sisto over the Tiber. Or you could do a view on the Mississippi with a barge there in Dubuque. Just a street scene in Fairfield. Venice, of course. This is the kind of thing I was thinking. This would be crazy difficult in watercolor. But I think this could be really interestingly done, this method. Now, there's Bridge in Burlington. We could do that. Mont Saint-Michel. All these gorgeous colors like that. Or just a utility thing next to the railroad track in Dubuque. So that's the idea. I mean, I'm excited because I can work in water media and work on subjects that I normally are unable to address. So back into the lavender. Mary, hello. I'm just looking for where do I see a light, and then I'm putting it there. Now I'm not doing the lightest, whitest whites. They're going to come in a little bit later. And that's, like I say, the exciting thing about this is that you can, well, here's a orangey light. There's some down here. Let's get into that jaune brilliant. You could very easily mix this color with cad orange and titanium white. That would not be hard at all. Just wherever I see it, I'm going to do it. Kimberly, hello. Bit more of the... Of course, this is slow-moving paint. Now I'm going to begin to get a little more specific. Here's the spire. It's almost like oil painting. It was so exciting watching the reopening of the cathedral. I was just so taken with that. That's the Jaune Brilliant number 1. That's the Jaune Brilliant number 1, Jaune Brilliant number 2. Where I see a kind of more yellowish white, again, white gouache and yellow ochre would do this. Now, up in here, actually, I shouldn't be putting these little lights in. Down in here, this area, I'm seeing a distinct blue, dark blue-violet kind of color. And back in here, a little redder, browner, warmer. And that's one of the reasons I like this was because I had a strong, dark, light compositional structure, but I also have a cool, warm kind of thing going on. So let's get a little bit of like normal watercolor painting. I'm just going to warm up this area back here where with the transparent red iron oxide, which is not going to do anything other than take that black paper and make it a little warmer black paper. Particularly, and I think most of that warmth is coming from the lights over here on the left bank. And let's get some ultramarine blue, a runny-ish mix of that. Maybe put a little Prussian in it. And we're going to just kind of hit this area, this big shape. Look how sloppy and fun you can get. I like being able to bomb into these things. And it just that puts the joy back in painting. I mean, it's just not all that worrying and craziness and angst and, oh my God, I'm not going to get it right. So let's put a little cobalt in it. Cobalt is a naturally denser any of the pigments that are naturally more dense physically dense and have what you might call more body. Yeah, those are the ones that are going to work really good. In fact, the British, gouache is a French name, is a French term. The English call it body color because you can feel it. It physically has more body in the brush. So I put a little bit of the cobalt turquoise in there. It's a dense, dark pigment. So where I'm seeing a little more bright bluishness from the lights, I'm going to kind of start putting that in. And if I need to do something to it to make it more, let's put some alizarin into that to get it purplish. Turquoise and alizarin. Well, thank you, Kimberly. I enjoy it. There's nothing that's more fun than sharing a passion. Now, I'm actually, as this dries, I'm seeing it's not quite maybe as warm as I'd like. So I'm going to throw a little bit of cad red into that brown area over there. And remember, our darks are going to be the obscure areas. So we just need to get the shapes right. That's the big thing we have to get there. I'm even going to use some black. So if you accidentally, like for example here, or here, or there, or accidentally, cover your black, you can recover. Unlike when we're working in watercolor, if you it's too dark or you're kind of done. So there's something big there, something down here. Let's put a little brighter blue, like the cerulean. This is like oil painting or acrylic. I mean, this is just so much fun. Now let's start to get a little more specific with, and that means we can do some darks and some lights. With a rose window, it's going to be harder to do. There was this large glass. It was raining apparently the night that they did this, and they had a big like greenhouse here where all the dignitaries pulled up and got out. So now I'm going back into my grays. Hi, Deb. Hi, Jane. So I'm going to start building up my lights. And that's this Stonehenge paper. I always did like their aqua regular white watercolor paper. The only beef I had against it, their cold press was rather smooth. I would have liked rougher. Let's get a little bit of that lavender in there. I'm squinting. Would I see? I'm using grays, whites, grays, the lavender, the pale blue, rather than white. I'm not going to my whites yet because I want to save that for all this extreme light stuff. So that cool gray, or Jan asked, is there any certain weight on the paper? This black is 140 pound, and they call it cold press. Now, the thing is, it's not exactly 22 by 30. You get it in sheets. You can get it in blocks, and you can get it in pads, I believe. But the full sheets are more like 20 and a half by 30. So, if you're planning on, if you have a certain framing regimen like I do, you'll want to, see, I'm going to mix some of that into this blue that I've been using. And so it's a little bit, that paper size is not a biggie, so nobody really. I tend to use quarter sheets anyway. I need a warmer. Use a very limited palette. That's what's another nice thing about this. Now, the other thing, not so much on this subject, but when you need to blend a color, you can go back in there and move it around. That's what's kind of cool about this. Let's get in here with some of this mixture of the blues and the browns in here. I'm gonna. And this is, I pretty, this could be done plein air very nicely. I intend to use it going forward. There's a sort of a rich blue, so I'm going to get some cerulean and cobalt turquoise, maybe even some ultramarine down in here. I'm going to get into the Prussian. Prussian with a little bit of white in it. Or phthalo. I usually find phthalo rather deadly in watercolor. But boy, you could use it here, couldn't you? Let's get Prussian and Cad Red. Make a deepish purple. Now, like a dioxazine purple would not work because it's too thin or too fine or too small a particle of pigment. Some very dark areas back here. I want to put some. Well, let's do that. Let's get our Prussian. And some lavender. More Prussian. And there's get that. Oops. There we go. So we're letting the black paper be the very, very deepest darks. And we're doing our next to deepest darks with these mixes. So as always, you have to be mindful of how much water you're bringing to the mix, because we're using slow moving paints here. Now I'm just refining some of these shapes I'm seeing here. I'm squinting very hard to try and they're buildings and structures, they're man-made things, ergo they're going to be a lot of horizontality and a lot of verticality to them. So let's try and refine the structure of the building here. I think there ought to be some flying buttresses over here, shouldn't there? Buildings there, windows there. Now, this detail down here is not quite as... I'm going to use the gray mixed with the Jaune Brilliant number 2 and maybe a little bit of this. So, for these doors. Now I'm going to need darker than that, aren't I? So let's get some of that blue in there. And some transparent oxide red. And some more blue. That's probably too much. Yeah, there we go. That's closer. So, I'm going to get a smaller brush, nylon brush, and I'm going to start getting into the brighter, lighter, so the gray. Down closer to the ground, the light was shining up, so there's a little more. Now, if this was bigger, we could really get into the little cute, beautiful, they're not cute, they're beautiful architectural details on the facade of the cathedral there. I'm going to start getting into the white. Hi, James. So, where I'm seeing the very, very, very bright whites. Some there, some back here, the odd one here and there. I'm just squinting, where do they appear? Let's make some of those actually straight up turquoise. I do see a bit of bluishness in there, and here too. Now here's the other cool thing about this. You don't have to frame it behind glass. David Becker, when he gets done with these, he lets them get thoroughly dry, and he coats them with Dorland's wax medium, which is basically white beeswax. And he has his paper mounted on a piece of foam core, and then he just sticks it in a regular frame. No glass, no any of that other monkey business that drives regular driving around with glass, trying to get to a plein air event without breaking the glass that you're going to use on your frames, and then getting them framed on location. Is quite a thing. Okay, I'm getting into my whitest, lightest areas. Now, just to show you, you can do a bit of that with a damp brush. You can move this paint and blend it if you want to smooth it out or something. It's if watercolor has been giving you fits, you know, you might want to give this a try. Again, I wished I could have done this with a bigger piece of paper. It would have been. Let's get some white with some turquoise. Where do I see that? Sort of in here. Oh, maybe a little bit up here. Now, let's rinse that out good and get into our warmer colors. Let's get some orange, cat orange and jaune brilliant, number 2. All these lovely lights over here on the left bank. Now back here they're kind of diffuse. So I can rinse, blot the brush, and blur them to look like because once you've got that dense pigment, it re-wets nicely. So I'm squinting, I'm trying to see where are all these bright lights at. Mindful of the fact that they're probably on streets. So let's start cleaning this up a bit. Now I really am feeling like I would like to address this on a larger scale. I'm putting some cerulean to some of these areas here where there seems to be a little bit more illumination. There's a bit of a street down here. So I guess would still have to be on the island. And this shape here needs to be very specific. Must be that bridge. Okay. So yeah, Mike, I'll tell you, it's a blast. It's more like it's more like acrylic, but unlike the acrylic, it will re-wet and you can move stuff around. I'm gonna you can glaze the black with a color that's going to pretty much drop in. So I'm putting some reddishness back there, some quinacridone rose. And I'm going to take a wet brush and just blend that in. And that's going to dry and you really almost can't see it. Hello, Jennifer. So yes, this is very, very different from what we normally do, or what I normally do with the working light to dark. Watercolor approach. But I'm excited because it's going to increase the number of subjects that I can address in a water media. Because it's always frustrating when you're like, particularly at plein air events and stuff, and you see stuff and you think, oh man, that's beautiful. And then there's the oil painters and they're working away on it, and you realize, well, that's just not going to happen in watercolor. Okay, so that is the general idea, I think. I like I say, maybe I have jumped into this a little earlier than I should have, as far as demonstrating it, but I'm excited about it. And what can be done with this, particularly if it was done at a larger scale. I am somewhat limited to what I can get inside the... It looks like I can go a little bigger here, so I'm going to think about that. But to kind of review the... I can see this shape in here. I've kind of got that off. So look what you can do. You can get in there. You can lift paint up. Kind of go back to the black. Good luck doing that with your regular watercolor. If you need some darks, just get your dark pigments and clean up an edge. Refine it. Accent it. Put some red on. You want to bring, say I want to bring this edge forward. Just put some reddishness there. It's not really going to show too much. It's the right value. But to review, rather than working light to dark, you may have to work dark to light. Or maybe actually we do still work light to dark, because we put those light areas in first and then can manipulate them after the fact. Like this here, I think it apparently was like a spotlight on the side of the thing. We could get that effect. Same here. Choose those pigments, choose the subjects which the lights are kind of the figure, and the darker colors are the ground. Need some more action on the left bank over here. You're going to have to draw with diluted light colored paint. I don't recommend using like a colored pencil because it's waxy and that's going to create a resist. If you can manage to sharpen a pastel pencil and get it to work, that might help. But the thing is, when you put any wet paint near it, it's going to disappear. So I just recommend drawing with the lighter colored paints. Just take your regular watercolor palette, add to it some white gouache, or get the colors that have the titanium white in them, like the Holbein Lavender or the Jaune Brilliant #1, or the Jaune Brilliant #2, which is orangier. A gray, this is a cool gray by Rowney that I happen to have, but that gray of gray by Holbein seems to be the favored color that David Becker uses. Naples yellows are going to give you a warm yellowish orange color. But the cad orange, the cad red, the cobalt blue, cerulean blue, cobalt turquoise, all are going to work good. Anything else, you're probably going to have to work in a little bit of gouache. So one thing I would say, look at that. Be mindful that Stonehenge is a soft-sized paper. So you may need to use a hairdryer to get your tape off cleanly. It will take up a little bit of the paper. It's just the nature of that particular brand of paper. But there are, I have seen people working on Canson My Tints. Joseph Zabukovich works on Canson My Tints and gets a good effect. I'm sure he could get a good effect on copier paper. He's just that good. But this is, I think, I'm planning to have some fun with this. So, you give yourself the ability to manipulate it after the fact, give yourself the ability to blend after the fact. Choose a subject. That's going to be the big thing. It's going to have something like this, and this is what I mean. It's more light, more darks than lights. Figure and ground, the light thing on the thing that's in smaller amounts becomes the figure, and the thing that's in the larger amount becomes the ground. This you would kind of want to, maybe I should try something like that. Before you could do that, you could put a glob down there and then just loosen it up. Yes, the tape, Jan. I use the Blick black tape. Usually comes off my Saunders or the other watercolor papers pretty well. Don't get the expensive 3M masking tape. The adhesive is way too strong. And there you could do something like this. Oh my goodness, that before I couldn't do that in watercolor, now I can. Street scenes like this, I've always liked. Nighttime street scenes. This, of course, my goodness, to be able to not have to paint around all of those lights. I can just plop them on at the end with the Jaune Brilliant or white mixed with the yellow ochre or cad yellow. If you do have trouble getting your tape off, it looks like it's starting to tear the paper, stop, get a hairdryer, warm the tape, and that will loosen the adhesive. Alternatively, if you're outside and you don't have access to a hairdryer or a plug, just put the tape on your shirt before you put it on the paper, and that will take a little lint off your shirt and reduce the tackiness of your tape. Boy, I need to get to Burlington. I think that could be... There's going to be more Saint Michel paintings. So, thank you all for tuning in. I'm really kind of excited about this. I don't know if I'm going to do another one of these sort of subjects or whether I'm going to try something more along the regular lines, but I'm pretty excited about this. I made fun of it when it first came out, but changed my mind. And the idea of not having to mess with glass, to put the Dorland's wax medium on there and mount it on a piece of board, like foam core or something, and then finish it with the wax and stick it behind in a regular frame, like it was an oil painting or something. That's really exciting. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that. I sure had fun with this. So everybody stay safe, stay sane, stay warm. Hi, Anthony, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.